let's go ahead and get started. Recording in progress. So if this is your first time to Zoom, welcome. Please mute yourself. That would be handy. If you have any questions, please go ahead. Questions for the administrators or questions for the candidates, please put them in the chat box. And Andrea is going to be our question moderator today. I'm Autumn, Guild Clerk, and I think you all know Brenda, and Allison is hosting here as well. We've got another couple board members here. Chris Kane and Sandy Bennett are also here with us. So let's get going. So I've also put in the chat the kind of the questions that we gave the candidates ahead of time. They're each going to speak for about 5 minutes. These are rough guidelines for questions, and then whatever questions you guys have for all of the candidates or a specific candidate, please just put your questions in the chat, and we'll get to those at the end. Does anyone have any logistical questions at this point? All right. Well, Renee, are you ready to jump on in?
I guess so.
We're going alphabetically with last name.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Renee Allen. I live in Oregon and I work for Ashland Post and Beam, and I also have started a small drafting consultancy business, working sort of freelance. I've been a timber framer for over 20 years and in construction since I was 15. So I've been tangential to timber framing or just participating in it actively for a really long time. And when I was in my early 20s, I found the Guild. I went to the Salem Centennial Pavilion Project up in Salem, Oregon. It was a really fun time. I met Steve Morrison and Jim DeSantis and Bill Sturm and a bunch of other people there. I'm going to look at the questions. I don't run on. The Guild's mission is meaningful to me because it's been a big part of my life and my trajectory in my career. I've learned so much from going to Guild projects and conferences, and the connections that I've made, friendships, professional connections, have been super important to me. And I think it's a great thing to be part of. And I want to continue being part of it. And I will, whether I get elected to the board or not. I've been privileged to be an instructor on several projects. And I think the community build projects are sort of my favorite part about the Guild, bringing people together, people getting to know each other while making something meaningful for the community. It's really beautiful. It's really great to be part of. And another thing that has been really important to me is safety. And that sort of started from going to the Salem Pavilion Project because I've grown up doing general construction, and it was sort of like safety stuff is for wimps. Just do it, don't cry. And learning that there's a whole industry devoted to keeping people safe is pretty wonderful. So tying that in with the community build projects is really important to me. As an instructor, I've helped write the safety scripts for several raisings, and I would like, if we're elected to the board, to focus on sort of streamlining that process so that every project doesn't start from scratch, and that we have kind of a baseline safety protocol that is always best practices on every single project. The skills, connections. So I've got pretty extensive safety training and a lot of experience with raisings. I ran a shop for 8 years with a large crew, and we did really big timber frame projects that interacted with a lot of other trades. So that's a skill that I bring to the role, something that I really value, and I think it's important. And another thing I think is I'm slightly unique in that I'm a woman and I'm a timber framer, and it's sad that that's still unique. But one of the reasons that I was so eager to join the Guild was that it was very welcoming to women. And in general construction, in the 5 years that I did framing, it was a very different story, very abrasive. And so being able to be part of the Guild, part of a welcoming community that's diverse and values that's important to me, and being sort of a role model for younger women timber framers, I think is really important. And that's all I got.
Great. Thanks so much, Renee. Mr. Sandy Bennett, take it away.
You're muted, Sam.
How's this? You hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. First, thank you, Renee, for having an A in your name so that I get to hear you first. Most of the faces on here I recognize. I think I know most of you, but those that I don't, I'll try to tell you a little bit about me. It's my loss that I don't know you. Been around this since 1978, I guess, I'd say is my introduction to timber framing. Through my ex roommate at college, Frank Baker, we decided we were going to do something together. And when it turned out not to be a wine and cheese shop in Jackson Hole, ultimately it got around to be timber framing, and I'm glad that's the way it worked out. So was a principal at Riverbend for 12 years, then sold out to Frank and Brenda, took a couple of years off to be involved with the family and the guild. During that period, took 4 trips to Russia to work on the boat building apprentice shop over there, which was a life-changing event. And it's kind of what the guild has meant for me. There's been no organization in my life that has had more of an influence on me and my family than the guild. And it's my honor to have served on several boards and to have served for the last 3 years. I feel like I have one more I can give to the guild, and it's my desire to do so. I was there. I bring a little bit of history and past knowledge. Was there at the barn during the formative meeting of the guild. Have not missed an Eastern Conference since. Met a lot of good people along the way, many whose faces I see here. I remember them differently back then. Some of you might remember me with brown hair, but that was a few days ago. But I'd like to give one more term to the board. Some things I'd like to accomplish. Well, my commitment, if I am reelected to the board, is to study, come prepared, have an opinion, voice my opinion, and then listen with an open mind to all the other opinions to work together to come to a consensus of what's best for the guild. There's a couple of things that I might like to address with the board or through the board. One is the projects / workshops, what we call them. I was honored to spend some time at the recent workshop in Independence, Virginia, which is just down the road from me. Wonderful gathering, great people, a model of what a project should be like. Kudos to Eric and Gash Morley, who were the heroes, the local heroes, and for what they did. I remember years ago when we started the whole idea of projects and so on, one of the main things that we tried to put in place at that time was that we would not, as a guild, ever compete on a project or for a project that a company might be able to do. Over the years, we've kind of moved away from that, I think. In fact, Mac told me that was taken out of the requirements at some point in time, in part due to necessity, because projects are a really big part of our financial structure these days. And I've always been concerned about the guild finances, and that's why I'm on the finance committee and want to make sure that we stay on solid ground. But as far as projects go, I appreciate that we that we need to make a profit on our projects these days, and that is a big part of the financing of the Guild these days. But I'd also like to explore the idea that maybe one project a year could be one where we really get into a community that we could help out, and we don't be concerned about making a profit or needing to make a profit, or maybe even getting paid for the materials. Just we do it because of the goodwill and the good spirit it brings to us. Now, anybody that was at that workshop, or most any of them, will know what I'm talking about. Eric and I discussed that after the Independence workshop, that what we did for that community, even though we hopefully made a nice profit on it, could not be done by a private company giving them a product. It just couldn't be. There was so much involvement, so much community spirit, so much good karma there that it just couldn't happen as a project, as a product that somebody just delivers there. So I'd like to explore that. If I'm on the board, I'll be pushing for that. And one last thing that I hope to do if I'm on the board is to get one of these, a chicken in every pot and a Guild directory printed in every car, home, desk drawer, wherever. I miss these like crazy. This is 10 years old. I use it. Maybe that makes me really ancient because I should have it in my phone divided up by states and so on. I'm not there. So I'm pushing for directories, and Brenda and I have discussed this, and we think we can do it without it costing the Guild a penny. So
Nice.
that's my campaign.
Great. Thank you, Sandy. Yes,
Thank
I'd love
you.
to see those. Love to see those as well. All right, Mr. Jim DeSantis, your turn.
Hello, I'm Jim DeSantis. If you don't know me, I live in Silverton, Oregon, just east of Salem, south of Portland, about an hour. I started Silver Creek Timber Works in 2006. My first Guild experience was a Western Conference in '97 at Timberline Lodge, where I learned what the Guild is about and met a lot of amazing people. I met Lon Tyler and started working with him, apprenticed with him for a few years. And he taught me quite a bit about how to be a craftsman and take my time and do good work. This led me to volunteering on community building projects that have been spoke about quite a bit already. My favorite experience with the Guild, besides the yearly conferences, are basically my inspiration and motivation to continue, and seeing all the great work being done out there is very inspiring. And volunteering on these Guild projects over the years, it's really hard to describe the power that they have for people. They certainly can change a life, and I'm all for more and successful projects in that regard. As to our mission, I think our community building projects fulfill our mission in the best way. We benefit worthy organizations, our membership, and help spread timber framing to a much wider audience. And they're a great revenue stream. I have a couple ideas for a couple projects in Oregon that I've started pursuing one, and have another one.
I think you froze there, Jim.
One in mind that I'm looking forward to pursuing in the near future. Say so. I believe in cooperation, integrity, and accountability, and I'll be a strong advocate for our members and the Guild in general. In the past, I've acted as a representative for another nonprofit philanthropic group that I've been a part of for the last 20 years, where I facilitated meetings, was a consensus builder, and worked with the treasurer on budgeting and financial reports and stuff like that. So that's really my only other board experience. But I've been encouraged to run in the past, and I've been nominated before, but I've never felt like I had the time to devote to being a board member. And I've just finished the last couple of years I've spent building this house, and I feel like now is really a great time for me to give back to the Guild. I've gotten so much, and such an amazing group of people. I want to be more involved. So yeah, it's an honor to be considered, and whether or not I am elected, I will be getting more involved, and look forward to helping the Guild inspire and thrive more. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Jim. It's great to hear you there. All right, Jackson.
Thanks, Autumn. Thanks, Renee and Sandy and Jim and all y'all for putting this together. My basic info, early 2000s in the Pacific Northwest, working with Craig and Jeff and John at Cascade, going through the apprentice program there, and just learning in that big shop, doing a lot of really, really cool custom work there. Lifetime member, and from there I did some traveling and itinerant work, both around the US and abroad, learned a ton from that. And I share everybody else's sentiments that community builds are really where it's at. It's kind of where it sometimes can be a real lifeline for diversity that we don't often have in the trades when we stay insular in our own shops. TF Guild mission is meaningful to me because of that, the community builds, just the ability to share knowledge and have all of us be able to come together and learn from one another, and watch young folks come up and get excited about it. That and the apprentice training program and the actual certification, I would love to. That's a real value to me, is to make sure that doesn't die on a dusty shelf somewhere, because I know how much it's meant in my life. Even though I'm one of few that went through that, it's actually been really useful. Skills, connections, resources. Yeah, I'm experienced with everything from big shops to being pretty dang close to a Chuck with a truck, wandering around with a pencil and a ruler. And I really value the struggles on both ends of that, and appreciate how the Guild can bring those different matters of scale together. I work with my local government here in the village of Cooperstown now in central New York. I'm the zoning officer, and so I work with our historic preservation board as well as multiple zoning boards, and I really value the process of consensus and transparency, and just how a board, the importance of a board really serving its community with impartiality and transparency. As far as what motivates me right now, I have time, similar to Jim. Really share Renee's values about safety and diversity and inclusiveness, and I think that this is a time for a great time for the board to be continuing to push in those directions. And we got our first few flurries of snow today. I hope everybody's ready for this. Jim, I got a little bit of ways yet to go on my house, but somehow I think I can make time for this. Thanks, everybody. I think that wraps up my piece.
Great. Snow already, goodness. Thank you, Jackson. Mr. Al Wallace.
Well, I didn't think I was going to come up so soon. It's like my number 5 already. I know when you said it was going to be alphabetical, I asked you whether it was first name or last name because I sat behind Michelle Walker for 18 years in high school. I got to know Michelle, but I was always the last corner of the far end of the room. But anyway, I appreciate everybody coming forward. I'm actually surprised at how many people are excited about projects, because I thought maybe I was being an exception, because we haven't had that many projects in the last couple of years compared to what we did maybe 10, 20 years ago. And I think that my introduction is I was working for the .coms looking for some sanity. And I went to Mount Hood to the first Timber Framers Conference, I think in 1989 or 90. And I thought it was a really cool group of people that I wanted to hang out with. And they accepted me, sent me to some schools, and I've probably done a dozen or so projects. The most memorable ones were the Kinetic Timber Frame at Kendallsville, where we built a windmill. And then also traveling around the world, whether it was Poland, hosting timber framers in Peru, going to Rottweil, touring buildings in Switzerland, going down to Texas. That was like a foreign country with the Colts project down there. But I think that my skill set ties into the Guild mission, not as a timber framer, because I think we have plenty of talent on the technical aspects of timber framing. I think it's more of as business owner. One of my passions and one of my skills is raising money. And when I was on the board before, we had some real cash flow issues, getting the Visionary Partners program in line, bringing it on board, getting a new website, incorporating in Arizona versus where we were before was one of the initiatives I was working on. So I think I bring to the party more of a business aspect, raising money, developing leads, and being a sales guy, which is what I've always done in the past. And in that light, I think that what we need to do is really get a lot more leads for building projects in a manner that is not onesies and twosies, get on the phone and call people. I've talked to Autumn a little bit, and also Lawrence up in Pemberton, up in Canada, about having service organizations contact the Guild to build their projects, where they would basically submit projects to the Guild for consideration, pay a fee to us to analyze the project, and we would be able to pick and choose which projects we want to do, which allow us to do things like what Sandy was talking about. If we have 10 projects a year that are highly profitable, we could actually do charitable projects if we felt like it or it made sense to us. The project in Peru was building a hospital wing for a medical clinic where they had no ability to serve people 70 miles south of Lima. And timber framers came down there, built the hospital wing, and it's made a huge impact on a barrio of about 8,000 people. And I'd like to see us do more in that. And I think that if we have a really, really strong project focus and we have a good pipeline of projects, that'll give us the money and resources to bring publications online, like the paper print directory, or just Scantlings in print form versus just digital form, and other things. It also brings the Guild together as far as members learning from each other, and also our ability to reach out and build relationships with community. And I think that's one area that we've really fallen behind in the last, 5 to 10 years in that area. Working for the Guild at this time, I think I basically shut down delivery of services in our company to where I'm just working on licensing the technology that we have for net zero energy buildings. There's a couple hundred buildings in the United States that use our technology for radiant floor cooling with ground source heat pumps. We have 5 patents issued on this, and that keeps me busy about half time. So I have time to spend the other 50% spending time with my wife and kids, or spending time with the Guild. So just kidding. I think it's a great opportunity to work with the Guild this time. So if the Guild sees a need for these services and chooses to elect me to the board, I'd be honored to do that. But I support anybody that's elected to the board at this point, because you guys are all super candidates. So thank you, Autumn, for putting it together.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Al. It's great to have you here. Last but not least, Sal, you're on.
Okay, right on. Well, my name's Sal Wilson. I live in Arkansas, which makes me somewhat isolated. I got into the trades when I got out of school because I wanted to, mostly I needed the freedom because I've traveled quite a bit. I used to be super into climbing and I chased that as hard as I could through my 20s. I ended up working on boats for like 5 years and crashed all over the oceans. And that was interesting. I worked on yachts for billionaires, and I learned a lot in that process. That was kind of crazy. Eventually, I wanted to build my own house, and that's how I got into timber framing. That was in 2009. And so I got into it with like 6 hours of instruction. And it really wasn't enough, but the frame did go together. It happened. And I look at it now and I start, kick, it was, I did what I could. I'm happy with it. I live in it now. But again, I was totally isolated. So when I found the guild, I kind of joined it really reluctantly, which is something you'll hear me say a lot, because I was kind of like, I'm not into clubs, man. I don't really do that. And I went down to the Nockanich, Texas project. And it was super humbling. And I was like, oh, wow, this is not what I thought it was at all. I don't know what I was thinking before. This is amazing. And I really haven't looked back. It's been great. And I've gotten a lot out of it since then. And it's really allowed me to keep going a little bit farther and a little bit farther. And that's basically what I'm still doing. So leadership, something is really interesting to me. And I got some of that from working on boats. I never got the chance to work under a really great captain, but I met a lot of really great captains. And I saw some common themes and some things I thought were really interesting. And since then, I personally think leadership is really hard. That's why they write so many books about it. And again, there's some other things I've seen in the guild that I think are really fascinating and interesting. And I'd kind of like to put some of that together. And then just having a varied background, working in residential construction has been helpful. There's a lot of things I understand that sometimes I feel might get lost on. What motivates me in all this is that, I feel like I've gotten more out of the guild than I put into it, which is pretty cool and pretty unusual. And that's really my prime motivator. I'm like, well, I want to get more involved in the guild, be it on the board or on a committee, whatever it takes. I would like to be more involved because I find it profitable in a personal manner, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. So what's wrong with that? That's kind of why I'm in this board game at the moment. But some of the things I'd really like to see happen and see the guild do is I'd really like to get involved in an overseas project, something beyond our borders. I think it'd be really interesting and a great way to go forward. And then again, I've gotten so much as a carpenter and, just as being able to get out in the mix and get outside my comfort zone with the guild. That's something I think is really important. And I want to make sure we're bringing all of our guild members up. I think it's important to me that if a random person meets a guild member, they're meeting someone who's, cut above. And I think that we're doing that, and I'd like to see that happen. I see instructors on guilds projects as students, and I don't see why we stop there. I would like to see things keep going. So basically, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I want it to be fun. I want to get into it and make it a solid thing.
Is that it for you, Sal?
That's pretty much it, unless you got some questions.
All right, well, okay, so you've heard from them all. I'm going to hand it over to Andrea to just moderate the questions. I don't see a lot in the chat, so maybe some popcorn style, who knows? I'll let you manage that, Andrea. Go ahead. You're on mute. You're muted. Andrea.
Sorry, I was the one that told Sandy he was muted. Now he's laughing at me.
Didn't you do an entire class that way?
Yeah. I teach part-time, and I was about an hour into a 90-minute class when one of my students broke in and said, Ms. Warchaser, I think you're muted. So we'll take the ones that were in chat first, but if people want to jump in as well, they can jump in and ask a question. Frank Ungert is asking where the candidates stand on mass timber, and I assume you're saying, is that in the purview of the guild? Is it something we should be tapping into? Anybody have thoughts on that? Of our candidates, that is.
This is Jackson. I think generally speaking, mass timber is really exciting, reducing the amount of materials needed and reducing the carbon footprint of concrete. I think some elements of mass timber can have heavy timber construction in them, but in my opinion, mass timber isn't, as it the way it works right now is not part of the guild's purview, in my opinion. No strong feeling about it, though.
Mark is asking how many others have done a project outside of the United States. If you want to just jump in and anybody want to talk about that. And as Sal mentioned, you know, that he'd like to see the guild doing those kind of projects. Anyone else have thoughts about how, if we should be doing that, how we might do that?
So there's Al Wallace. I've probably done a half a dozen projects outside the US if you don't count Texas. Poland was the first project where we stayed for 2 weeks and looked at how churches were built that laid the foundation for the war memorial in Warsaw. In Peru, we, as I mentioned before, we did a project to build a hospital wing. Went to Rottweil, Germany, the Gewerbe Academy, Switzerland, Pemberton. Canada is almost the US, so we won't count that. And I think that getting international guilds and international students involved with the guild should be a priority for us. And the only example I'm going to use is from Poland. We happened to be by a field of high school students singing around the campfire one evening. We got to know the high school students, and I ultimately had some extra miles, so I flew them to Estes Park to a guild conference. And it was the first time they ever actually had traveled outside their little town, let alone their country. And it was very enlightening for many members of the guild of how common we have interests to people that don't even speak our language, or we're even timber framers and vice versa. And those students have gone on to become extremely successful in their own career fields. And I think our ability to impact students in that way, whether it's overseas or within the US, should be an area that we focus on.
Anyone else want to chime in on that?
Jackson again here. Agree with Al. I also had the opportunity to go to Poland, but I'm sure it was a little bit later than he did, and it was for the Gwodziec synagogue project for 6 weeks there. And still being able to be in contact with so many great people I met on that and watch their lives unfold and watch how that project impacted them. And that's the only one directly associated with the Timber Framers Guild, but I've had the opportunity to work with other NGOs and just companies from Estonia to Poland and France. And I agree that making those connections with other guilds and organizations outside the US is of great value and really important.
Renee here. I have not participated in a project overseas, but I've been able to participate in projects at home where organizations from another country came and worked with the guild. So the first conference I ever went to was at Asilomar, and there was the Kazuro Kai came and built a tea house. And I think that exposure and that connection to other guilds bringing people here is just as important as doing projects elsewhere. And that could be, I don't know where I'm going with this thought, but that's also an interesting avenue, I guess.
Great. I was glad, Jackson, that you mentioned the ATP and coming up as through the apprenticeship program, and the education committee is trying to revive the ATP along with a continuing education piece, whether that means certifying people as journey workers, master timber framers. I don't think has been formulated, but certainly including the apprenticeship with continuing ed is a piece that's on the table right now. Janet Kane in charge of that that committee. I'm wondering what our candidates, if they have thoughts about the apprenticeship program or continuing education and its how that fits with the Guild's mission.
I would like to see the guild partner with some other guilds, perhaps some blacksmiths or maybe some organizations in Europe. I thought that would be a pretty neat, interesting way to get something happening. I feel like there's a lot of potential. I mean, it's huge, really. We could be doing some really cool stuff. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of, it doesn't just drop in your lap. But that's something I'd like to see happen. And then about mass timber, I was a foreman on a CLT job for the University of Arkansas. It was 27,000 square feet. It was all CLT, and it was hands down by a considerable margin the worst job I've ever had. It was totally brutal. And I learned a lot, but man, I hired a timber framer as a consultant on that job, and it was helpful. But in the end, I realized that actually what I needed was a red iron guy, because that to me is a much closer to red iron than timber framing. So in that sense, I don't know that anyone's really suggesting that we do CLT as a timber framers guild, but I think you would probably not have a huge turnout if you tried.
Anyone else on back to mass timber or on the apprenticeship program?
I haven't been that involved with the apprentice program, except through observing as an outsider. So I haven't been personally involved. I get the feeling it's a lot of overhead for very minimal impact. I think there needs to be technical trades training, and I think that a core value of the Timber Framers Guild is education. But I think our secret sauce is the Heartwood School and opening up to a much broader audience. And if people need to get specialized training that they would get through the apprentice program, it's available in several areas, whether it's OSHA for safety training, rigging and raising, or whatever. Or as Salvador said on CLTs, you can get specific expertise there. But I think that we spent a lot of time on the apprentice program and a lot of resources. I'm not sure we really got the benefit of that massive investment that we've made.
Any other thoughts on that?
I just say that I'm a big fan of the apprentice program, but over the years, it seems like it's been a real slog to try to get critical mass there for it to keep going. So I think we need to keep trying, but there's still a lot of work to be done there. But the tie between the apprentice program and Heartwood, and the opportunities that present themselves just in general with Heartwood, I'm just really thrilled about. So hopefully we can get those working together to the benefit of everything. As far as mass timber, I'm been kind of psyched to do some. We haven't done any mass timber yet, but after hearing Sal talk about it, I've cooled off a little bit.
Well, continuing on the topic of moving more into education, Frank Ungert's asking, do the candidates see a chance to establish partnerships with local polytech schools? And I guess I would tie that also into with the guild running Heartwood at this point. What are the opportunities for both what he's asking, local polytech schools, and also for Heartwood to expand its reach? What do you see the potential there for either or both of those to our candidates?
I think that if the guild is able to, I'm also very excited about Heartwood being able to help out with the or be a central piece of the ATP. And I understand that the guild has put a lot into the program without seeing a whole lot of return, but part of that is the creation and establishment of the entire program. And that is effort that I would not want to see wasted. I think that if Heartwood is able to provide some of the certifications for in the apprentice training program, then, and these are recognized by the Department of Labor, then those could really readily be extended to polytech schools. And that could be a way for the Guild to continue to share with communities and also highlight what the Guild does. Both are possible and great.
Anyone else want to speak to that? Al's got a question for his fellow candidates, so I'll let you ask it, Al.
So we all know that we don't have an ED right now. And there's been some focus in the past to make sure that the ED was a timber framer or somehow associated with timber framing. I personally see a different skill set of an executive director versus a professional timber framer. I think the organizational skills, we have some very, very competent project managers out there they work as contractors. So we have a wide pool of very, very skilled people. And personally, I think the executive director needs to be able to manage contractors doing work, not personally doing the work themselves, and work with staff, a minimal staff, to get things done. And I think that the staff we have is pretty competent at what they do. And so it's not a my way or the highway job description. It's somebody that's good at reaching out to the community and building relationships and leveraging the resources that we have. And that's my personal thought on what we need for an ED. But what's going to come up very soon over the next 6 months is whatever candidates get elected to the board, we're going to have to decide what that executive director looks like. And I'm curious what other candidates think about those qualifications.
Yeah, I think we've kind of had to reprioritize, or we should. I think high on the list, we need a good fundraiser. We need a good manager. A minor in timber framing would be okay, but not a prerequisite. That's not what that job calls for. So I'm going to be looking for somebody with different qualifications than what we've historically looked for. But being able to communicate and relate, fundraise, manage people, be empathetic to begin with.
Yeah, I have thoughts on that. I feel like, from the experience that I've seen of other executive directors, we're asking for a guy to be, pretty polished in an office and also kind of rally the troops. And I feel like the skill set that you get, that those two are often, the personalities will often be pretty different. So if we're trying to find one person to do that, I think they're statistically likely to be fired. I see that as there should probably be two people in that position. One to kind of rally the troops and maybe be the face, and then another person that's perhaps more organized in how would you say that? In an office setting, I guess. I think it's asking a lot for one person to do the role that I've seen so far. And I also think it's interesting, like on Guild projects, how I've seen two people running it recently. And I think that's really fascinating because it's not really all that normal. But it seems to work really well. So I definitely would like to see that type of leadership structure change. And how we go about that is going to be a lot of fun to argue out, but I do think it's fascinating. That's my 2 cents.
Renee, I saw you unmuted. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with Sal that it's a lot for one person. And I think part of being an executive director is knowing when to delegate and to allow the people who work for you to do their job. And so somebody who has experience managing multiple people in multiple places and is a really good communicator and willing to take feedback, I think that's super important.
really share those sentiments as well. The prospect of having two people take on that position is very interesting. One person being very much an organizations person who can take feedback and support those around them and delegate and trust people in a hands-off way, and another person who's maybe more project manager on site, hands-on. But yeah, empathy and somebody who's used to working in a supportive in supporting an organization, I think is really important for that role.
Well, we've had a few questions and comments on membership, so maybe we can address that next. Is there a desire to increase the guild membership? Do people feel that we have plenty now? How would you increase membership and diversity? I'll just throw into the mix that we started a social media Facebook group for discussing timber framing, and there are about 11,500 members on. I would say they're from all over the world, probably more from all other places in the world than North America. Does that represent potential members, or is that just an interesting sideline? So anything you want to say on membership, if you have thoughts to chime in.
I mean, I can't imagine anyone not wanting there to be more people and more membership. I mean, that's kind of what makes it fun. I mean, ultimately, the guild really is its members, as far as I can tell. And that's the part that's, it's a kaleidoscope of human beings. I think it's great. It doesn't mean it's easy, it makes it fun. So I want to see more people in it. I definitely want to see more people not like me. That's important. And because that's where it gets interesting. That's where it's happening. And I think, it sounds cheesy, but that's kind of the magic of these guild events. When you show up, I guess I'm a fairly curious person by nature, but when you meet all these other people, they're like, whoa, dude, that dude was like super smart, man. And then you meet someone else and it's the same thing. You're like, well, this is different. So I can't imagine not wanting other people to get psyched on that and wanting to share that. I mean, yeah, man, that's when it's a party. That's when it's all about.
So I'm not quite sold on the numbers as the quality. I'd rather have fewer engaged people that are really passionate about what they do than hundreds of people that simply clicked on a digital membership and never do anything. And I think that it's important that when we define membership, that we actually define what we mean by that. I think we always ought to be focused on signing up members, getting people involved in guild projects, or signing up community members to be members, or other trades, like we've mentioned before, other guild members. If you're a member of the Welders Guild, I don't expect you to sign up to the Timber Framers Guild, but I think there should be collaboration between us, and you can party together, drink beer together. I think focusing on just the numbers can get us into trouble, but I would like to see an outreach to people that are qualified to be members, and we are not reaching out to them now, or they're not seeing value. They're not seeing the value proposition that the guild brings, and that's because we don't really have a value proposition right now. We've been struggling with a bunch of other issues, and I think that if we have a good value proposition, I think that the membership will come, versus just signing up more people. Because if we make the body count, the number, the goal, then I think we're missing out on the quality and the engagement that we need to be successful as an organization.
Agreed. I think it's important to increase membership, but quality matters. It would be unfortunate if a measurable percentage of people voting for the guild's board just signed on Timber Homes magazine for, just to get the magazine or something like that. So people that are engaged and providing value for the members, so that people that are timber framers and are engaged in this and do value it can find value and reason to be part of the Timber Framers Guild. As far as increasing diversity, I think starts with doing everything we can to remove the barriers to this world that are just part of our culture. And part of that can be the educational programs and community builds, and just making sure that we are finding avenues to outreach to other local schools and educational programs and communities.
Yeah, I think we're at a pretty ripe time to increase membership. I'd be interested to know what the last couple of years have looked like as far as increases or decreases. I'm not quite sure what to make of the increased popularity in social media, but I'm not sure that uninterested parties being members of the Guild is necessarily a bad thing. I say the more the merrier. And I've told several people that are at all interested in timber framing that, a Guild membership, the cost of admission is, you get that out of the publications alone, besides all the other opportunities and offerings of the Guild. So it seems to me that we're at a great point to increase membership.
I'm all for doing what we can to grow membership. I find it hard to believe that everyone wouldn't want to be a member of this group. It's a good way to live. It's positive energy, but some people are here they're members just for the publications, and that's great. I'm guessing those people probably are not voting. The votes, what do we typically get? A third, a quarter to a third of the membership votes, something like that. So not too concerned about a hostile takeover or anything, but the more memberships, our publication costs go down with every new member, and on and on and on. So there's a lot of good people out there with a lot to offer. And I say, let's open the door.
Well, there's been some great comments added to the chat on that topic and the ATP, and it's really heartening to me to see the level of engagement, even just in this kind of conversation, that the people that came tonight have thoughts, they have questions, they want to add their own thoughts to the conversation. So that's the segue into reminding you that we're going to have a members meeting coming up is that the first week of December?
Yes, December 1st.
So rather than get into some of those discussions in this forum, defer the getting into the weeds with that conversation to that time. But we're just about at an hour. So I think unless there are last questions for the candidates, or anybody wants to kind of say a last word before we close to the evening, throw it out to our candidates.
Well, I mean, I don't know, the way I see it, like a whole bunch of people show up and work for free at these projects for 10 days. It's a pretty big hurdle to convince someone, because I've tried to get them to go. They're like, wait, what do you mean free? And it's not like, I understand, but the people that do make that hurdle, I think it's you're dealing with, like, to me, I already call it judgmental. I'm like, they're already a cut above, that they would even willing to do that is a big deal. And I think it starts out like, oh, I guess I'm going to donate some time and help the community out. I mean, that's cool. But I think in the end, you start to realize, like, oh, wait, there's a lot to be had here. And that's when the whole color of it shifts. And therefore, I feel like, if we're going to get more members in, and we're going to have to just give them something, it's not that hard, really. We do that. And so, I mean, what I'm trying to say here is that, it's a pretty special thing. However it works out, we're getting to work with some pretty neat people. So I'm not worried about membership, and I'm not really worried about the future of the members or the people involved. That's like the strong part to me.
Yeah, and I'd like to say that a big thanks to everybody that's running for the guild, for the board. It's not easy work. It's got lots of challenges. Takes a lot of time, a lot more time than anyone else probably realizes. So thank you to everybody running.
Turn it back to you, Autumn.
Yeah, I just really appreciate all of you coming here tonight. It's wonderful to see your faces. We've just got some incredible candidates. We've got, the voting is already open, so you should have seen in your inbox the link to vote. You're gonna keep getting bugged through Simply Voting until you vote. Allison's probably gonna send out another announcement sometime soon this week, I think, even tomorrow. So go ahead and vote, please. And the voting will keep going until November 25th. So we've got plenty of time. And again, I want to, invite you all to the members meeting on December 1st, so we can get in with the current board, get into some of these questions, get into membership numbers, our financial situation, and whatever else, the state of the guild. We've got a lot of great things to share with you. And mostly our ears are open to have a conversation, answer questions, all that fun stuff. And Brenda, did you have anything that you wanted to say here?
No, not really. Just thank you all for being here tonight. It's it's the participation of everyone that keeps the guild strong and keeps people involved. And while you're all little faces in a square, I feel like, what was that game show that people used to do that? It's just being together, even on the screen, is so gratifying. It's just remembering and realizing the support of so many people over so many years that has made this guild so strong and continues to make it strong, even during all of the transitions and all the changes and all of the upheavals. It's the people, it's the members that is the organization. And so while we'll be looking for new leadership, and there were a lot of really good comments tonight, it's the members that really make the organization what it is. So thank you all for being on here tonight, and it was a great session.